Alright, so apparently today is the day that every single one of my neighbors decided to repair their roof. There's like 4 different construction teams up and down my street, so trying to get as far away from there as possible right now. It's a little laggy too. Let me know if it gets real bad as far as like photo jank is concerned. Anyway, as you can see, there's colors on trees and shit, which is the thing that happens when it gets cold. And around here it's been about, maybe, it's like above freezing, between 5 and 0 degrees last couple of, so. One thing you may not know about all the colors in the leaves, I mean, you know they're green normally, of course, but that's chlorophyll and everything. And the color that you see in the leaves is the color that the plants are not eating. So as you can see over there, there's a bunch of different ones. There's like orange and yellow and red and green. And there's actually reasons they have different colors like that too. Now these ones are mostly green, which is what trees normally are. But you also see this time of year a lot of different colors in the leaves. Like this maple right here has a lot more red in it. It's got like a big mix of like these brownish colors because it's got green and red being expressed in this right now. Now normally trees are green because, you know, that's the color they're not eating, all the color of light they're not eating. They reflect all that. And there's actually a series of color pigments in every single tree, which is why we see all these colors in the fall, which is something I think they probably teach in like elementary earth science or whatever, but the different colors that you can kind of see. Actually, this leaf is a really good example. You can actually see a little bit of the yellow photopigment and the red photopigment all kind of mixed together there, still being expressed along the veins there. But the chlorophylls kind of die off and leave all these other older photopigments behind, things that evolved a lot earlier in plant evolution. And as the leaves decay, they kill all the chloroplasts because they're high energy. They make a lot of energy, but they also are high maintenance. So they get rid of those to save energy for a while and keep getting scraps of later season sunlight. The sunlight's actually a lot more at a shallow angle, so there's less energy being delivered to all these trees during this time of year. But yeah, when you see over here this big orange tree and this big yellow tree, they look very different because they don't have all that chlorophyll being expressed, and all they've got is the yellow pigments and the red pigments from a long time ago. Like this one right here, this maple, and I think that's another maple, but it might be a Japanese maple. My eyes are very bad, and I need new glasses, so it's hard to ID them at distance, but yeah, you can see all the, I think it's xanthophyll is the yellow one, but you kind of see how it varies from tree to tree too. I think these two are even the same species, but one's just further along. Maybe it got more stressed. Maybe it got colder. I don't know. Maybe there's more of the wind. I'm not sure. I'm not a tree, but if I was, I couldn't actually talk to you right now, so that's probably a good thing. Now, this whole region is actually pretty hilly. It's actually called Farmington Hills. So it was notable enough that when they founded the city, they put it in the name. But that's on account of the fact that this whole region used to be submerged under a giant glacier. I'm in the Great Lakes region, so a long time ago, back when there was an ice age and stuff, a bunch of ice came down, kind of like carved up the entire landscape, which, I don't know if you can see the nice rolling hills right now. It's kind of hard without depth perception, and cameras don't really do that very well, but all these look like rolling hills that we have here are just ice that was sliding over the land slowly and creeping along it and melting and shifting its weight and just pulverizing like, I don't know, a quarter mile worth of solid rock into dirt and stuff. And then as the gravel kind of piled up on top of it, it was pretty dark, and the ice around it was really light, so all the dark rock absorbed all of the sunlight that was hitting it, got hotter than the ice did, and it created these hot zones that melted through the ice a little faster. And so then they got deposited in these big hills and piles and ridges and stuff they call moraines, which... Oh, hello, squirrel. Do you mind doing a cameo? What's up? Alright. But, we have all these nice rolling hills because of those piles of rock and dirt and whatnot that just sort of built up on the top of the ice and absorbed all the heat and then melted first, so we get these nice big rolling hills everywhere. You also get a bunch of things like, you can even pan for gold in streams and stuff because there's just so much like raw metal that got deposited in the dirt, which isn't super common. It's more common in glacial till, but yeah. And of course this area has also been heavily managed, as you can kind of see. There's just grass as far as anything goes. A couple trees that were probably planted after they clear cut this whole area. I don't think any are very old. They all look pretty young. The spruces over there might be a little old, but spruces grow kind of slow. I love the blue-green color too. Yeah, there's a lot of like, little... It's a very wet area too, because the water table's kind of high. Very permeable soil and all that. So I'm gonna go over here. I think there's a bunch of colorful trees over here, which look rather nice. And skateboarders. Maybe I should have taken the other path. They're going to be too rambunctious for a calm autumn walk. All your leaves are gone. Oh well. You did good this year. But I love this orange color here. This looks like another maple. Beech maple is a big forest you find in glacial till soil. Oh, come on, focus on the leaf, not on my hand. No, on the leaf. What are you doing, camera? My camera's very disobedient today. Well, hopefully you can still see the tree, but... Oh, this fiery orange color, though. Look at that. Look at that. And yeah, that's several different photopigments being expressed in different cells along the plant's vascular structure at different intensities, because they're still all being reclaimed by the tree, which wants all its energy back that it invested in leaves for the season. So it's cannibalizing itself, and then drops all the leftovers on the ground after it's done. I don't know if it really eats the carotene and the xanthophyll and stuff, but which is the yellow and orangey red. But I know it does the chlorophyll, because that's like a whole complicated chemical process. But the history of photopigments, as far as like all these different colors, is kind of cool. If you think way back when, like back before there were plants. Ooh, who are you? This might be an apple or something. Crab apple. But I'm not 100%. It's got the scraggly branches of something, but maybe. It's got these little berries. I don't know. Once upon a time I was a little fresher up on plant identification. They're so small though. It can't be hawthorn. It ain't got any thorns. I don't know. I guess we'll just chalk it up to a mystery. But you do get a lot of different coloration in these leaves than you do in those maples. Might also be fungal rot, just a skosh. But that happens at this time of year anyway, because half their body is dying. It's kind of morbid. But anyway, we got all these different photopigments in the plants, and oh, there's no good trees over here. I'm going to double back. But yeah, so let's go through this gully here. Whoop, that was pretty low mud. Ugh. But yeah, all these different photopigments that you get in leaves way back in the day, it was actually a really bad idea to have green photopigments and stuff like that, because back in the bottom of the ocean where all this stuff first kind of happened, rhodopsin, which was like the first photopigment that ever existed, came about. It was kind of purpley, because purple is the color it didn't want to eat. What it wanted was green and yellow and blue light which were, well, less blue, but green and yellow light, like mid-wavelength light, because that was all that penetrated to the bottom of the seafloor, because the ocean kind of absorbs a lot of light. And so, as the light's kind of filtering down, the best, highest energy stuff that was available, the best food that was around, was all those mid-wavelengths. And so, bacteria, archaea, which were kind of like in charge at that point in time, were like all big up on eating all the good light. And then when chloroplasts came around, and we had other archaea that are like, well, I guess these plants are eating all the good light and they are absorbing it, so it does kind of disappear. It doesn't reflect. What reflects is all the garbage light that they don't want, all that purple wavelength. And so when chloroplasts came around, oh, this is an old dud. What are you? Your leaves. I forget these guys. I know these guys, but I can never remember what they are. But what's important is right now, this tree is old. So this might be one that actually predates all this construction that somebody left in. It does look old enough. We can actually check the rings while I'm kind of meandering through a discussion about photopigments, apparently. Oh, no, we can't. Let me see. I guess I'll count them up real quick. And somebody put in a little tab there, a little spacer. I don't know why. I wonder why someone would do something like that. Maybe they were trying to... Maybe there used to be something hanging from this little branch. It's kind of like a mark, too. I don't know what that is. It doesn't look organic, but maybe it is. I'm not an expert on people. Or on trees, really, but I know a couple things. Yeah, and there's like little solitary bee delios in this, too. Looks like they got all plugged up. At least I think so. Maybe beetles. Maybe it's just crystallized sap. I'd estimate about, looking at the rings from here to here, this is about 30 years-ish, and this is about another 25, 30, so I'd estimate 50, 60 years before this big low-hanging branch got cut. And that was probably a long time ago, because this is much thicker than that little bit. Maybe 2 or 3 times the size. So, yeah, maybe 100 years, give or take. Hard to say. I don't really recognize the bark on it, and I'm bad at winter ID. I once was taught to identify trees by taste. Take a little board and take a sample of the bark, but I'd rather not make my neighbors think I'm quite that weird. Now, pine trees like this don't really lose their photopigments, because they're kind of old enough that they remember the Ice Age, and they were kind of designed so that they wouldn't lose their leaves when it got frozen. And they have these needles which are a little less efficient at getting light, because they're not big broad things, not like big surfaces that capture a ton of light. And they have some kind of resin in them that makes them frost resistant, and it makes them have that piney scent, as I understand it. Yeah, this is a red pine. You don't want to eat these needles, but they're a lot thicker than some of the other ones, so I'm sure there would be nice uses for them. I bet you could use it for like thatchy stuff or something like that. And the resin's good for a number of things. And these branches, as they go down to the base around this time of year, they're collecting all their sap from their extremities and they're pulling it back in here where all their energy is stored, because the leaves are turning, or the needles are turning all that energy into goop so it can eat it. And so yeah, down by the base you get this sap saturated wood like this. I call it fat wood, and it's really good for burning if you wanted to burn trees, or at least pieces of trees. I'm sure the trees probably don't like that, but you know, they don't care about the cold as much as we do, so yeah. It's so pretty how it gets all saturated with this goop, and the wood is just thick with it. But if you cut a big slab of that, you can just use little tiny spikes of it, and it basically is like oil or gas-soaked wood, basically. It's all hydrocarbons in there, so it's highly combustible. But around this time of year, it's a good time to get it, because all of the good fat wood's going back into the branches, and then when spring comes, it'll move back out, I think. But Yeah, they don't really care about the cold as much. Apologies for the wind if it's windy. I'm either facing the sun or facing the wind right now, so, and the microphone's probably picking that up. Oh, and this friend has a lot of rot. You are not doing so hot, my friend. Oh, a lot of fungus likes getting into trees, and every year they kind of just accept this because they make new leaves every year. It's just cost of doing business, I suppose. Now, I don't know if it lurks inside the tree itself and just reinfects it every year, or if it just happens to get infected somewhere and then it gets through its whole vascular system, but it also doesn't benefit from killing the tree outright, so you only get these little splotches until the tree is ready to get rid of its leaves. And then you have a whole party of little black splotches all over your leaves. That might be why it's keeping its grain up this late, I don't know. Maybe it needs more energy, maybe it's not set for the winter yet. Good luck, little bud. This is a fairly young tree. I hope you're okay. But yeah. So I was talking about different photopigments, and I keep distracting myself with stuff on the side of the road. Or with those darn skateboarders who I probably keep cutting out of the video. Darn kids. But yeah, so you got a lot of photopigments in your leaves. And back in the day, the best light was green and yellow and mid-wavelength light, because that's what penetrated deepest into the oceans and onto the seafloor. So all of the archaea that lived way back then, that's the light they wanted. So they made a photopigment that was purple. It reflected purple light, but it ate all the green and yellow. And so what was ended up happening was when scavengers evolved, the first scavengers were light scavengers. They wanted to eat all the wavelengths that the archaea weren't eating. And so chloroplasts and other early photopigments came around. There's a kind of rhodopsin that's sort of pink, which is, interestingly enough, the kind that's in our eyes. We inherited that same photosynthetic pigment, which is what detects light, bright and dark. It's not what sees color for us, it's just what sees the bright and dark colors. But, oh, little spruce. Oh. It's always sad seeing the dead bits of a spruce. Because you're not supposed to lose your leaves or your branches. Ah, well. But yeah, so the first scavengers of light were other competition for all the protobacteria that lived in the bottom of the sea. And all that purple light they were reflecting off was still good food. It still had energy. In fact, it's higher energy, but there was just so little of it on the seafloor. And so once bacteria got a little more mobile, and especially once there was land, then plants were like perfectly adapted to just take over, because there was so much high energy light, all that purple and blue light, that they were ready to eat, because they were adapted to be scavengers on the seafloor. But then when they found their niche, I mean, they way out competed the bacteria, and the bacteria are still down there on the bottom of the ocean, just doing their old thing, still eating all the junky light that gets through to the bottom of the ocean. But plants found this whole new niche that was just a way better place. I'm just down here by the storm drain culvert, checking out all of the aquatic cousins of plants, the great grandbabies of those plants that figured out how to scavenge on the bottom of the seafloor. Although these ones are freshwater, of course. Little green cloudy bits in there and stuff like that. Pretty much any standing water will take them, and they'll keep repopulating whenever the water comes back. Although the water table here is high enough that it's pretty frequently sodden. You can kind of see some of that glacial till down there too, all that gravel and stuff. It tends to collect where the water slows down a little bit, which in this case, I mean, it's not moving very fast in the first place, but you can see some nice bare rocks down in there between all the shiny light and whatnot, and the cloudy bits of algae and all that good stuff. I'm surprised that grass lives in this water okay, but it seems to do alright, even waterlogged like this. Maybe there's enough oxygen in the water that it's able to breathe enough. I don't know. But yeah, so these little algae cousins of plants, the first plants, kinda, although these aren't technically them. But these are the ones that figured out that whole thing about scavenging green light, or scavenging purple light, from the leftovers of all the bacteria that were feasting on all the stuff that would get to the bottom of the ocean floor. And then when they got up to the surface, like in these shallow depths here, where the light can actually penetrate the water pretty well, they were doing great. And so, yeah, they spread all over the place, and eventually they learned how to keep their water inside them and, you know, turn into grasses and woody shrubs and stuff, and then you get all these trees. And all these other photopigments too, which are, you know, pretty pretty. Here's another maple, although this is a different maple. I can't tell if this is a Japanese maple or something else, but it's got those kind of big palmate separate leaves like that, you know, kind of narrow, so they look different. But yeah, you can see more of that red pigment in these leaves. Almost looks purple, like in these. Yeah, it's all just a bunch of different colors mixed together, expressing themselves differently on the top side than the underside. The blacker it is, the more light it's absorbing. Which means I guess these are probably getting relatively more of the light of those mid-frequencies that our eyes like green, the things we're sensitive to. You ever notice how when you look at a bunch of shades of green, there's like, on a big color spectrum, there's so many more shades of green, it seems? And I know that's partially a product of language, because we only have so many words for different colors and delineate them in different places, but all the different green colors that there are is just because our eyes are kind of tuned to obsess about green, and we tell all the differences in it just because it's a useful trait for us. I mean, we came about in an environment that there was already a lot of green around. Even though our eyes use that same purple pigment that's in those bacteria on the bottom of the ocean for detecting brightness and everything. Even though our eyes are just about that old, we just evolved a bunch of mechanics on top of it so that we could be extra sensitive to greens. I love those cellular structures and all those little vascular lines and leaves. Oh, it's very pretty. Anyway, you can kind of see all the different colors in this one, but ooh, there's some brilliant reds. Hello, brilliant reds. Can you see them? I don't know if it's focusing very well. I'm kind of reaching it far away. But, yeah. So surface plants and their weird adaptation to scavenge for light ended up making them really suited for the surface. As even though at the bottom of the ocean they weren't doing so hot, and they were just relegated to the bits they could scavenge for. Which I suppose if I were to try to convert into a snappy Aesop, it'd probably be something along the lines of, So that just goes to show you that, that my neighbors are apparently still working on their roofs. I had to walk far away from my house so that I could at least record without a bunch of wood sawing and hammering noises, but we're getting close enough that you can hear them again, even though they're like 3 blocks away. A lot of noise. But yeah, snazzy Aesop. So if you're finding yourself ill-suited to your environment or whatever you're doing, or like you're not doing a very good job, or like you're a poor fit for whatever it is you happen to be doing in life, maybe it's actually not shortcomings on your part. Maybe you just need like a change of pace or a change of scenery, and you'll find out that you're actually extremely well adapted for it. I think that sounded pretty good. I like that one. Hello, Bruce. Hello, Bruce. I love that silvery color they get on their needles. Well, back into the carpentry zone. All up and down the street today, people are working on their homes. I guess it's the weekend, and that's what you do in the suburbs. You come home on the weekends and you work on your roof, like you do. But anyway, I guess that'll conclude our tree walk.